I'm an activist in the community, served as an organizer. Initially, I co-founded and chaired the Arab American Voter Registration and Education Committee, and that was prompted and spirited by the fact that our general community at the time was under attack by a variety of groups and people with regard to our culture, our religion. One of the real stories that gripped me very strongly, Helen Atwell, she was an activist in our community. She's a wonderful lady. I sat with her when she was a part of the South Dearborn Community Council, and she was telling me the story of her son, who was going to school and came back home bullied by other students about his Arabness. And he told his mother, he says, I don't want to be Arab anymore because there's too much of I get too many abuses from it. And it drew her to tears. She was in tears when the boy told her that story. And I said, you know, these are the things we're trying to correct. We need to make our children feel proud of who they are, where they come from, their mothers, their fathers, their culture. You are the essence of your parents. You are the essence of the cultural relationship they had with themselves. My father came to this country as a teenager. He falsified actually his age to get gainful employment. He came from Yemen. He always talked about his grandfather more than his father. And his grandfather was his mentor. And he finally became employed at Ford Motor Company. But the unique thing about him, he held two jobs at the same time. He worked at Ford Motor Company and Chrysler Corporation. And he worked like that for 2 years. Where how that came to an end was he had an accident at the Chrysler Corporation, had to go to first aid. They bandaged his arm. So the next morning he goes to work at Ford. The supervisor sees the injury, and the supervisor questioned him, how did this happen? My dad revealed it happened at Chrysler. Well, he hadn't done anything wrong, but the supervisor says, listen, you can't work these two jobs. You got to pick one or the other. So he stayed with Ford Motor Company, where he was gainfully employed for 40 years. My mother came from Bosnia-Herzegovina, the former Yugoslavia. She was Serbian background and Eastern Orthodox persuasion. So they met on the line at Ford Motor Company. She would prepare lunches at a little place where they would make lunches, sandwiches, and then in a little train car, drive into the major Rouge complex where they were given to the workers for lunch. What I have derived from my mother and my father was a strong sense of understanding cultures on both sides, very important to me. It expanded my world in a very dramatic way in terms of understanding people from all walks of life. But I watched as a little boy walking with him, how when someone was in need of help, a total stranger, he would help them. And he would do it with kindness and sensitivity. When I grew up in South Dearborn, it was an immigrant community for a number of decades. It had the distinction, first of all, of being so unique. I mean, you had a mosque, you had, early on, you even had a synagogue, and you had a variety of different Christian religions too, as far as churches, Eastern Orthodox, Catholic. I've got a few degrees, and honestly, growing up in this richly diverse immigrant community, I learned things there and considered a more valuable education than in many ways than the formal degrees I got at different levels. And I look at specifically the Yemeni group that I feel very, very close to, very heart-filled in terms of identifying with, the blossoming of that community in so many ways. It's gaining the respect that it always deserved and never had. I've always been Pan-Arabic in my perspective. I don't like the differences that people create.